Today, I want to welcome Ryan Matonis. He is the president and CTO at Lead Force 360. He started his way as a data scientist, computer science major, and became interested in being an entrepreneur and launched out on that, started a larger marketing agency, and has an amazing past. He's met somebody I wish I've met. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. You know what? You don't need to be a techie to appreciate this interview. In talking with Ryan, there's some lessons that you can apply regardless of what you do. And so with that, I just want to welcome Ryan. Glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we were talking and I looked at where you went to university and I said, did you meet? And I couldn't remember the guy's name. I could remember Don. And you said Nielsen, which I was actually his partner, Jakob Nielsen of the Nielsen Norman Group. You met Don Norman.
Met Don Norman.
Okay. So you, me, and about three other people that are listening know who Don Norman is. Who is he?
Well, he's the father of usability. And I guess he was a huge contributor to like UI and UX, and I believe the iPhone. I could be wrong about that, but I think it was the iPhone.
Yeah, he is listed as a fellow. He's listed as a fellow on Apple Fellow that contributed to usability. And what's really interesting is years ago I remember reading some things by him, and I was thinking about how do you do navigation on a website, and I came up with what I call kind of the two-tier, instead of having big drop-down menus, having kind of two tiers. And then I looked at the Apple's website and I realized, oh my goodness, this is what they've been doing for years. And then I looked and I was like, oh, Don Norman has been advising them on usability. And I guess it turns out when you drink from the same well, you come to the same conclusions.
Yeah.
But how did you meet? I mean, I'd love to meet this guy. How'd you meet him?
So I was at, it was one of my first startups. I was part of a team called Embrace. We were working on like a healthcare device, fall risk device. And we were at a entrepreneurship convention. We had a booth and we were hoping to find like investors or like partners or just like somebody in the world that could help us bring this thing to life, because we had bitten off like orders of magnitude more than we could chew. We didn't end up succeeding because of that. But I did get to meet Don Norman. He came up to our booth and he kind of listened to our pitch. He looked at what we were working on, which was kind of half complete. And then he just said, there's no way anybody would ever use this. And then he turned around and he walked away. And that was our entire conversation. And he ended up being right. We got one or two customers, and then they never actually used it. And that was that.
What did he see that led him to say that?
If I had to guess, probably it was like a negative thing that you would have to think about all the time. And it was just like people didn't want to like have negative mindset changes. Like they didn't want to feel like now I had to like put something on myself to monitor like my risk of falling over or something like that. Like he probably saw that people weren't going to just like get excited about doing this every single day and do it consistently and things like that. And then also it was like technology for like old people, which wasn't really there's hurdles there. Like,
well, and we kind of glossed over something. You said he was kind of the father of UX. What does that mean? Why was Don Norman important beyond just being the founder? What was it that he brought to usability that makes him a legend?
Simplicity. I really don't know. He didn't mention it in our conversation, I would say.
Yeah. But
intuition.
Yeah.
Like it has to be something that you intuitively know how to use. Like it shouldn't be something that you pick up and like you have to be taught. Like if you're given a tool, you should be able to just solve your problem with that tool without having to go through the manual,
And I think there's a lot of people that don't realize that there was a time where if you got a copy of Microsoft Word, it came with a 3-inch thick book. on how to use it. And so you had your 3-inch thick book on Microsoft Word sitting on your desk so you could figure out how to use it. And I can't remember the last time I've seen an operating manual for any software product.
I think they're just different now. I think there's probably still 3 inches of documents, but you can just search it, and it's like I go through. I mean, I don't know. You go through anything. It's well, that's not true. There's so many things that are just undocumented nightmares. Like you just buy some product and you sign up, and like nobody tells you how to use it. Um,
Well, and I think one lesson that comes out of your run-in with Don Norman is we know this intuitively, but we sometimes forget, and that is there's value in expertise. You know, people have walked roads that we haven't, and they can save us time, they can save us money.
yeah,
I mean, if you could go back to that conversation you had with Don Norman with what you know now, what would you have done? What would you do differently?
with everything I've learned about sales and marketing along the way, I would have done that conversation totally differently. Um, Probably would have engaged him, probably would have asked him a little bit more about himself instead of just pitching him. Like I had no idea what I was doing, which is probably why it went the way it did, right? Um, I probably would have been a little bit more interested in Don Norman, which it would have helped if I knew who Don Norman was, and like my co-founders weren't just like, oh, just
Yeah,
I don't know if that came up on the mic. Um, but I don't know, maybe I would have tried to get his like phone number or his email so I could have followed up with him or like had another conversation with him. I probably wouldn't have let the conversation end right there. You know? Like
yeah,
what a crazy opportunity. Like you probably didn't even understand like why UX. I definitely didn't understand why UX was important back then.
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what I would have done differently. Now, probably not figure out what was wrong with our UX.
Hmm.
Maybe.
Yeah. That's interesting. And so I guess here's one thing that's kind of interesting is you're a CTO, but I hear you talking about sales and marketing. You know, you said if you could turn back time based on what you know about your solution that you chose, if you could turn back time back to that conversation, was a sales and marketing solution rather than a technical solution. But you're CTO, that which is interesting. I mean, that's fascinating. How what do you make of that? That you have a natural sales bent, but you also have that foot in technology.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I necessarily have a natural sales mind. I had to work for it. I don't think I got to tell you the story of how I got to where I am. Because
No,
actually where it began was I started something, I guess I don't know. Should we just scroll back to the beginning on this? I
yeah,
guess
let's do it.
I
Yeah,
was
let's do
working
it.
at a Fortune 500 company, and they were going to go hire all these big expensive consultants to like write a database program, and like I was the intern, and I just didn't see why we needed six highly paid consultants to do it when I thought I could do it myself based on what I learned in one of my classes. And I did. I built it myself. I saved them $1 million or more on actually value getting this built and not including what they were going to spend. Gave me some terrible low ticket offer for full-time employment. And so I said, I'm going to go figure out how to work for myself. Right. And then like, make more money doing that. Didn't figure out the more money part, wasn't really making more money. It just kind of was out there like freelancing. And I started a software company called Lead Engines. Um, the way I started Lead Engines was my friend he was trying to get me to build a software product. He didn't have enough money for me to build it for him. Um, and he basically was like, hey, if you could take data from all these different places, combine them into cold email lists for outreach, it'd be great. Like I could pay you $1,500 to build this for me. And I was like, well, it sounds like a lot of other people would need this. You don't have enough money to pay me to actually build this out. Like you would be stuck having to fix it if it broke. Like it's never going to get upgraded. You don't know how to upgrade it. So what if I just build it? I give you a lifetime license. I'm going to own it. I'm going to sell it to other people. I'm going to get them to pay me to upgrade it. And then you're going to have a better tool and you're going to pay the same price. And it's not going to be your problem. Okay. So, a couple more years down the road, I end up just selling, or I guess acqui-hiring is probably the right word, into LeadForce, using lead engines because they were selling, exactly that service to people, sending a bunch of cold outreach, and they needed it to go power their service. But that entire journey, like I was a solopreneur, I had to learn how to like sell and market on my own, which was actually where I learned that I needed to hire other people to sell and market for me because so many people blew me out of the water so many times on the sales and marketing thing so quickly that I just had to like get over it, you know?
Hmm.
Um, Sorry if that was just total rant, long form, but
No, no,
that's a
no.
little background on me on how we got where we are.
Yeah.
Um,
So from a sales, just looking at the lessons that you've learned from sales, what would you say if you were to pass on wisdom to somebody? Hey, here's one thing I did that you should do differently. What would that one thing be? Just from the whole perspective of sales and marketing.
did that they shouldn't do or that they should do?
One big, your biggest lesson that you would pass on.
Um, Probably work things to the end. Like
What?
everybody just kind of, that's probably the easiest way to say make sure you follow up and try to close and take, go to a no. Ultimately, all of that sales advice comes to just working things to the end. It's like working something all the way until somebody says yes or never call me again. Because there's things like getting referrals, there's things like following up years later, there's things like just staying on their radar for, years until they need you for some completely unrelated thing and you're both in like different industries or something like that. Um, but it's just like not letting it like stay on top of it. Don't be the court where the ball gets stuck, basically, right?
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so you obviously didn't take it's funny, you said it was a low ball offer that that company, you built the database and they gave you, I mean, how, that's surprising because you had demonstrated expertise, you had brought value to their company. Why do you think they were lowballing?
So in hindsight, no, now I totally understand that just, um like it's really easy to point at like something on like the cash flow table, however you want to think of it, something on the spreadsheet about money and point out your part and say that this is like what I did. Um I think part of it is like just, every business needs to make an order of magnitude, 10x profit on engineers that they hire. That's just kind of the mentality that a lot of these companies have because they're long-term investments.
Hmm.
Um, and then there was also just a lot of other costs of employment involved, like they've got to give you benefits, they have to pay to put you in a cubicle and they have to pay your manager and they have to pay all the office and the software. And it's like, it's not just the money that gets in your pocket, right? So I guess one, I was just looking at it. I wouldn't say completely wrong, you know, but I think
Hmm.
if I went back and I ran the numbers again, it might not have been as egregious as like I thought it was at the time. Again, just learning lessons along the way, right? Like, oh damn, okay. Um, Sorry, I don't know if that's off limits. It's,
No, that's good.
um, uh, and then I guess, other people probably could have done it, right? Like it really wasn't that hard of a problem. And I think a lot of the times when you solve hard problems by just seeing that they're actually not that hard of problems and solving them in a really easy way, like people don't always see the value in that. They're just
Yeah.
like, oh, I guess that wasn't that hard. It's like, oh, okay. Like, why didn't you do it?
Well, Steve Jobs always said simple is hard.
Yeah, that's true. Simple's hard. Back to Don Norman, elegance. Elegance meaning like as few pieces as possible that you kind of intuitively understand. Like you sit down at a machine for the first time, but you know what the buttons do, and kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So time progresses, and you've got a marketing agency that helps people get leads, but it's focused on cold leads.
Kind of, or like I wouldn't say cold leads. It's like it's outbound marketing. It's reaching out to cold leads and finding out which ones are going to be warm or which ones might be potential customers.
Yeah.
Um,
So I mean, that's an interesting area to me because I'm strictly inbound. Don't do any outbound. And what what do you find that works? Doing that.
what do we find that works?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of answers to that. The first is you have to have a system. Like if you want to make hundreds or thousands of phone calls, you can't do that where you're just like, I'm going to call this person. Who do I call next? Let me think about it, right? Like you have to just have a system where it's like, I'm going to call all these people, and then depending on these outcomes, I'm going to put them in these lists, and then I'm going to go call this list and this list and this list. And if I do this, I'm just going to call everybody and I'm going to work it to completion. Like there's basic systems like that. And depending on your scale, that can be anywhere from like a complete CRM system like a Salesforce or a HubSpot that can just be an Excel spreadsheet. Can just be like this itch in the back of your mind when you haven't called somebody, just depending on how strong of an itch you have. I know some people that can work like that. I can't.
Yeah.
Um, but then the other part of it is like you need to have a script. And so often it's like the script is tied to like the personality of the person calling, or like it's tied to like a subset of the customers you're calling. And so it's like, if you want to get really, really big, you have to come up with a script that's going to work for everybody. Or if you want to like keep it really narrow, you have to make sure that you're only calling people it's going to work for. So, um, I guess, but to get back to your point, tie it into what you do, I'm not surprised to hear you don't do any of this, because actually podcast, I think, probably takes the exact same part in the sales cycle as like an initial cold call almost. It's like you have these highlight reels, like you get people's attention and then they see it and then maybe they go listen and they have like that first conversation and like they learn things, and it's kind of like a discovery call, you know?
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know, actually, I think they're kind of analogous, but they're just totally different. It's outbound compared to like inbound, right?
Yeah. Um, so obviously, years ago you turned down a job working for someone else. You felt like they were lowballing you. But now you're the president and chief technology officer. What have you learned about managing and leading teams?
Oh man. Um, it's good if they can manage and lead themselves as much as possible. And there's ways to like enable that. Um, some of it's tech, some of it's not. I guess anything, really any business problem can either be tech or it can be not. You know, there's not many things like you use tech to solve problems, right? Um, but it's really important to have like other leaders in your organization. You can't be responsible for leading everybody. Ideally, like some amount of the leadership's going to come like from culture, even just like people all being on the same page about things or thinking that things should be a certain way. So I guess what I'm saying, maybe leadership and management, like management is more direct, leadership's indirect. Um, so maybe like a good culture, you have less management because you have leadership, you know?
Hmm.
Um, but I guess as like a CTO, particularly like my role in this, let's say we're doing a bunch of calling. I need to be able to track how many phone calls everybody's made. I need to have a spreadsheet that shows me how many people they've connected with, how many warm leads they generated, what their percentages are. I need to know that they're making their calls. I need to know that they're calling the right people. But I can also just put that in like a report that the whole sales team can see. And it's like everybody's performance is tracked, and it's red, green, Excel spreadsheet or like conditional, like the formatting, right? And so it's like red, bad, green, good. And then it's kind of self-managing because people know they're going to get on a call with their manager, and the manager is going to like look at the spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet's going to be red or it's going to be green, and they're going to get mad or they're going to be happy based on what color it is. And they know what makes the thing change colors. They make more calls, it turns green, right? Uh, so there's a certain amount of like leadership and management that you don't have to do by like creating systems that enable people to like manage and lead themselves in these ways, you know?
Hmm.
And I think that's actually like a really big thing if you want to be bigger than just a couple people that need constant like leadership or management.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'd never thought of tech being part of the whole leadership element, but the way you explain it, that's clever. I get it. Um, what are some of the challenges that you've run into? So, one, how big of a team do you lead?
We have about 30 people.
Okay, and what are some of the challenges that you've run into?
I would say just in my role, like adoption of systems sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, it's interesting how it's like it's almost never the people. It's either the system is adopted or it's not. And like you can have 15 people adopt one system, and then you have another one that like just nobody else ends up using. And I think it goes back to this UX thing. I think we're gonna end up talking about Don Norman the whole time, which is more than I've talked about Don Norman in years, frankly.
Yeah.
But part of it is like if you have systems that make it easier for people to do their jobs, they will use those systems. And like if you're like, oh well, I need to track this, I need reporting on this, and you just like pile it on top of somebody as like extra steps, and it's not like cohesively integrated, or like, oh, I know I need to go put that note over here, but I'm talking to this customer right now over here, or I took their call in my car. Like that's kind of where the systems break down.
Yeah.
And it's actually it's not the people's fault typically. Like we've put enough systems out there on our team, and it was always pretty much 80-20, where it was 80% of people used it, 20% didn't. Sometimes 100% people use it because there's just it's unavoidable. Um, or it's the exact opposite, and like only 20% of people are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing with it. So it's the system's fault. And as a system's fault, I mean me as the person implementing the system, it's my fault, or me as the person that picked the system, right? Um, it's a lot of just trial and error. It's just like, is this going to make their life easier? And you just launch it, and you just hope everybody's, see if the spaghetti sticks to the wall. And if it doesn't, you just throw more spaghetti. There's no shortage, there's so many tools and like SaaS widgets, like you're never going to run out of noodles to throw at the wall. I guarantee it. Come back next week, there'll be more.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling the number of SaaS tools that are out in the market that you can, I mean, just for recording meetings. You jump on a Zoom meeting, and I was on one earlier today, and it's like everybody brought their bot, and so there were three different bots. There were three people in the call and three bots in the call, and the bots are just sitting there harvesting. But there's a lot of tech. There's a lot of solutions out there.
Yeah.
Well, cool. And
There's probably too many.
yeah,
I don't know, like they're kind of all feature creeping too, especially with like Chat GPT. So it's like so much easier to like make them do more things. And
hmm
so it's like they're kind of stepping on each other's toes now. Like your so and so data tool has added a CRM, and your CRM tool has added, data sources, and like your email tool that used to be connected to your CRM, like now they're both like their own standalone systems, and like we're just gonna have 100 tools that all do the exact same thing, have the same set of features. Just which is
yeah,
fine, I guess. We'll probably get a good price, but
yeah. Well, and let's circle back around to the cold outreach. So is it just calls, or is it also email?
we've done it all. We've done cold outreach or through email, phone. We've done it through LinkedIn. It actually kind of depends on who we're doing it for. There's just things that are better through certain channels than others. There's some things that people don't use. Good luck cold calling a doctor, you know.
Yeah.
Good luck cold emailing. God, good luck getting in contact with the doctor other than just showing up, I guess. But
Well, and one of the things that's happened is this year, both Gmail and Yahoo changed the rules for getting the emails delivered, and it's how's that impacted you?
so as somebody that's on the data side of it, it's not the end of the world, because yes, we're not able to send as much, but I kind of like to think of it as like if you just sorted your list by like who the best people to email were, and then you have like the best at the top and the worst at the bottom, and you just took like the top 100. I don't know how many people you would have in your list, but like you're gonna have 80% of the value in like that top 20%, right?
Oh,
So there was just kind of more of a burden put on outbound marketers to send better email to more accurate lists of people, get less spam complaints, do things like say, hey, I saw that you're running this job ad, right? So like now, if I have clients that are in recruiting, I'm not just going to email blast, hey, are you hiring? It's going to be like, hey, I saw that you're hiring for this role. We have somebody, I've got their resume on my desk. It looks like they might be a great fit. And maybe that's true. Maybe like we used Chat GPT to read the job opening, which is like something that we've done, right? And maybe we really do have a match, right? Like maybe that's actually something that we can say like more honestly now, right?
yeah.
Um, but then we just send that to less people. We stay more targeted. Everybody else is hitting the spam. If we're the only ones in the inbox, that's okay. A lot of the times you win because you're the only one in the inbox. Like I can't tell you how many clients I got for cold outreach that said, you know what, I get this email 100 times a day, but it goes to my spam folder and yours went to my inbox. So I guess I'll talk to you and I'll hire you because I don't need to tell anybody anything that's that complicated. I just needed to hit the freaking inbox. Well, okay, like sign here.
So why do you think yours hits the inbox while others don't?
Probably it was a newer email or something. I hadn't sent as many, or we scrubbed it harder, or our message was more targeted. We kind of figured out, like, after sending a ton of emails, like, here's this list of things that you can do to get spam listed, basically. And if you just don't do any of these things, if you don't screw up any one of these one things, people will read your email, or they'll
Mhm.
at least get your email, and then 40 to 50% will read your email. Um, and it's just like getting a certain reply rate, like making sure that a certain percentage of your replies are people saying yes instead of like never email me again. And then like we kind of just managed campaigns to check those boxes, and we were able to still hit the inbox. Part of it is it's kind of like SEO, where it's just like Google just, oh, we're making a change, and then everybody just screams, and like they don't know what's going to change, and like content marketing is dead, cold email is dead, sales is dead, like just, because Google made an algorithm update. You just got to kind of roll with it, and you got to figure out what it means for you.
Yeah. Well, it's cool. It's been an interesting journey for you. And the kind of going back to that early job that you felt like they were lowballing. Um, are you glad you went the route you did, or would you, if you were back in that point, would you make a different decision?
Hmm? I don't know if I would, go run the gauntlet again if I didn't have to, but it was I have more fun now. I don't know that I always did along the way. Um it actually really is really hard, just starting from, just I don't know how I'm, just I had no knowledge of marketing or sales, and I was just going to go put myself out there. I don't regret doing it. Um but it was hard. It was
Yeah.
hard. I don't know if I could go do another 4 years of just starting from scratch and like change my name, and you know, I don't think I would have to, because you just learn so much along the way. You connect so many dots. You mostly learn what not to do,
Yeah.
but
So as we wrap up, if you had one piece of advice for business owners in 2024, what would that piece of advice be?
call your leads, call your customers, go have a human conversation. Like just you like there's so many tools that are just like obvious AI, or just getting spammed, whatever. Like if you're a B2B service provider and your customers are valuable to them, just call them, talk to them,
Yeah.
just be connected. Don't fall
And
for the you know, use all the spam stuff for like cold conversations and finding new people, but make sure you treat the real ones with the respect they deserve. Which is
that,
that.
that's good advice. Well, Ryan, thanks for coming on Layers and Legacies. How can people reach you?
Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Mention that you saw me in the podcast, because get 30 LinkedIn spam messages a day. So
Yeah.
um, need
Yeah.
something to stand out if you want to reply.
Excellent. Well, Ryan, thanks for coming on Layers and Legacies.
Yeah, Craig, awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.